Hi Plummels. So one of the things I have always appreciated about animation is its ability to tell a story just through visuals, and since my biggest dream is to one day talk about enough cartoons to become one, I feel like I should start using his techniques in my daily life. So instead of a normal plot description today, I'm going to tell you the summary via descriptive images. Now that actually makes no damn sense. I think it's fair to say I'm a little bit of a Mario fan. I'd only put him above sliced bread and below breezing. Okay, fine. Am I a Mario glazer? Poor chance. It's not the only thing I play, like some Nintendo fans, and obviously not every game is amazing, but when these games hit, they hit hard with some of the best level design, controls, and pure creativity you can find in a game. But also, have you ever thought about how weird Mario is as a franchise? He's a plumber saving the princess in charge of the mushrooms from a turtle, and that's not even mentioning the dinosaurs, ghosts, or whatever the hell a Bitty Bud is. It honestly makes sense that they struggle to adapt these characters to other mediums, and honestly, I think it's one of the main reasons why I have a lot of respect for 2023's The Super Mario Bros. Movie. Sort of. Like, yeah, the pacing is way too fast, the humor is hit or miss, characters like Toad feel forced in because it's a Mario movie, we have to include Toad, the post-credit scene is dumb, and the celebrity casting leads to some really lackluster performances. Like, I think Fred Armisen as Cranky Kong is one of the worst performances I've ever heard in an animated film, but there is a lot I like here too. It looks pretty good, the score is astounding, the jokes that are funny are pretty funny, and once we get to that third act, I can't imagine not enjoying any of this. And I know Mario's arc is a bit simple, but it, alongside his connection to Luigi, ultimately holds the film together and allows for the game elements to be played straightforward and with respect, which I appreciate. As a lifelong fan, it was such a good watch that I avoided it like the plague. Okay, yeah, after that initial honeymoon phase, it's easier to see this as a flawed film that, on rewatch, became worse and worse. So for the sake of my enjoyment, I avoided revisiting it for the longest time. Still, I was hopeful a sequel would be able to fix those issues and become a genuinely good film, but I didn't know if there was anything in particular that'd get me overly excited. Oh god, they got me. So a little fun fact about me, Super Mario Galaxy 2 was my first Mario game. It's a game I have a lot of attachment to, and it gave me a special connection to this side of the franchise. I don't own 3 copies of the first game just for tax reasons. Well, it's weird to go from Mario Origins to a big space adventure. From the different galaxies, the variety of power-ups, enemies, the cinematic quality of the game itself, and the emotional story behind Rosalina, turning this into a movie just made sense. But the trailers did give me some concern. Lots of elements from non-Galaxy games were here, we didn't see a lot of Rosalina, and they were seemingly avoiding showing much of the story. On one hand, I'm glad they were trying to keep some secrets, but on the other, there was a lot happening here and I wasn't sure how it all tied together. But hey, it's Mario. He's my one-sided friend. Even if there's flaws like the original, there was no shot he'd ever miss that bat. Well, maybe I'll enjoy it from a fan perspective, right? Okay, I'm gonna make this apparent from the beginning. The Super Mario Galaxy movie is fine. I don't despise this movie, but I don't think it's a masterpiece either. I'd say it's a 5 out of 10, and there are some things in here that would almost convince me to give it a 6, but wow, this thing is messy. Not only from a critical perspective, but as a Mario fan too. And I want to talk about it, because if I tried to fit this all into a Letterboxd review, it might be a bit too long. So let's try to do this properly. What is the Super Mario Galaxy movie about? Your guess is about as good as mine. All the film's official website mentions is the fact the first film made $1 billion and the same people worked on this one. And after seeing it, I kinda understand why. So the film sorta follows Mario and Luigi, who, after stopping Bowser, have seemingly become heroes within the Mushroom Kingdom by helping where they can. They meet up with Yoshi and the 3 head to Peach's birthday party. But after a Luma crashes from the sky and informs the princess about their muzzle, Rosalina, being kidnapped, Peach and Toad take off into space to save her as Mario, Luigi, and Yoshi take care of the kingdom. For 2 minutes, because then Bowser Jr., who kidnapped Rosalina, shows up to rescue his arrested father and throws the trio onto a different planet. Now, on paper, a lot of this isn't an issue. but in execution, there's a few flaws. With so much to set up, introducing 3 new characters, beginning everyone's arcs, and getting the whole cast into space, the opening ends up dragging, and you can tell they didn't know where to fit everything in. We get 2 scenes with Rosalina and Bowser Jr. before we even see Peach or Toad, and they go to space before we are even introduced to Bowser. It's honestly such a weird difference compared to the 2023 film being so fast paced. If that movie's opening dragged, it at least makes sense with it setting up the world and having the whole cast meet each other, but instead it feels like it throws you straight into the action, while here it takes what felt like a half hour before everyone lands in space. And speaking of pacing in a sense, let's talk about the character balancing here, because I think it's one of the parts I've seen both the fans and critics divided on. Mario and Luigi spend the entire film together this time around, which isn't a terrible idea. Their bond in the first film is one of its strongest aspects, so you'd assume putting them together would lead to a stronger story. But honestly, they don't have much to do. Early on, it's established that Mario has feelings towards Peach and is struggling to open up to her about them. And despite them sharing a few bonding scenes and an action set piece together, this is never resolved. There's technically a little payoff right at the end, but Mario himself never stops stumbling his words around her. And even in the whole Rosalina was kidnapped storyline, he doesn't have much to do until the third act. He goes to find Peach after Bowser Jr. attacks, but faces really no obstacles getting there. He becomes a baby because I guess they need Yoshi to do something, and then he faces off against the Bowsers at the end. Say what you want to about the first film and its simple story, but it at least gave purpose to Mario. He not only has to save Luigi, but prove himself to his dad. By the end, you saw him go from failing a training course and stumbling through a fight with Donkey Kong to crashing a wedding and facing Bowser's whole army. Even if the arc is basic, it is rewarding. Here, the arc they were going for is unresolved, and he only has one real fight before we reach the final battle. It's strange how meaningless he feels for a film that has his name in it. And if he is meaningless, Luigi and Yoshi would be useless. Yeah, as much as I like Charlie Day's Luigi, he's just there for Mario to bounce off of. And I'm genuinely convinced the main reason Yoshi was introduced in this film is because they put him in the post-credit scene, so they had to use him somehow. All he really gets plot-wise is that scene with the babies, which feels like such a pointless detour that I'm convinced it only exists to give more screen time to this dinosaur. Donald Glover does give an Oscar-worthy performance here though, and the dude is pretty cute, so I guess I'm willing to forgive the film for this. And Toad, wow, he's somehow even more pointless here than in the first film. The only plot relevance he has is when he gets his bag stolen. He doesn't even participate in the final battle. I fully thought they were going the Captain Toad route from some of the promotional, so the fact he really does nothing here is not only funny, but a little impressive. But most disappointing of all is Rosalina. Oh my god, what happened here? Rosalina, protector of the cosmos, mother of the Lumas, big space head, essentially a moon girl to put it blunt. I had nowhere else to put it in this script. Now, I'm not gonna act like she has no relevance to the plot, because she is the whole reason Peach and the others go to space. But man, this is a Mario Galaxy movie. She is one of, if not the most iconic element of the game, and she deserved so much better than being a damsel in distress. And I don't even get why they did it. I feel like the first film was really smart for making Luigi be the one in trouble, giving Mario a direct motivation to try and stop Bowser. Here, nobody knows Rosalina. Peach learns a bit about her on the journey to save her, but her only real motivation to save her at first is just because Luma says she should. If you really wanted a character to serve as a MacGuffin to get the gang into space, why wasn't it the Lumas themselves? You could have Rosalina go to get help, giving her much needed screen time, and it would create a character throughout who has a connection to whoever is in danger. And it wouldn't even ruin the storybook twist here because she wouldn't have to reveal it immediately. Which, oh yeah, speaking of which, the storybook changed? I don't want to get into specific spoilers, but the twist here is interesting. I don't hate it for this iteration of these characters, but it almost entirely removes the emotion of the original story, which was what made Rosalina such a compelling character. Not sure why they started pushing this book so hard again right before the film release just to change it like this. Honestly, all of this just makes me feel bad for Brie Larson. She's been such a vocal Nintendo fan for years, so for her to get this role just to be sidelined in what should be her movie is disappointing. And then on the other side of the scale, wow, there sure is a lot of Peach in this, huh? Princess Peach in the first film was a bit of a divisive character to say the least. They avoided her being kidnapped, which I think was a good move for the story, but also made her a lot more of a confident leader and hero rather than the girly girl she is depicted as in the games. I understand why they took this direction, and I think it fits better with her more modern game depictions, but it was hard to get a grasp on her with the film moving by so fast. Here, she gets more exploration, in a sense. We hear a bit more about her feelings towards being the only human within the Mushroom Kingdom, and her being the first in space gives her a lot more to do story and action-wise. Made me appreciate this version a bit more, even if like most characters, I feel like it could use a little bit more focus. She mentions her feelings, but most of the time they're brushed over quickly to get to the next set piece, even if they do get some nice payoff in the end. Honestly, the only character that have a complete arc is Bowser. Wait, seriously, Bowser? Like many others, I felt Jack Black was the MVP of the last film. Not only performance-wise, but comedy too. I will stand by the fact that Peaches is a funny song that makes me smile like a 6-year-old every time I hear it. So on paper, it makes sense to give him more to work with. But I wasn't expecting that to be a full-blown, genuine character arc. Like, we see him struggle to change his ways, sacrifice himself for Mario and Luigi's sake, while also being pulled back to the dark side to try and make his son happy. It's a fully rounded arc with a payoff, which for a character whose whole purpose in the games is to try the same old kidnapping thing over and over again, is shocking, and it's especially shocking when everyone else in this film is barely given anything to work with. I don't even think Jack's performance is the clear champ this time around, but he still ends up being the most entertaining character because he has substance, he has meaning, he rage baits Mario, he really does everything right. And I guess that leaves Bowser Jr., who is good. Honestly, I don't have a lot to say about him. Benny Safdie does a better performance than I expected. I like how Bowser and him have a reverse father and son influence going on, with Jr. being the one to encourage his dad to be evil. Characterization is on point. Not sure if there are any huge Bowser Jr. heads out there, but they should be satisfied here. And doing the math here, that means out of the main cast, we have 3 characters with enough screen time and story purpose. And 2 of them are the villains, okay. Yeah, let's go over some more positives for a minute. The animation here is amazing. I have many faults with Illumination, but their visuals have never been one of them. Honestly, was excited when they announced they were doing Galaxy for this aspect alone. A lot of the space stuff here looks really great. The characters are lively, the colors pop, and a lot of the action here is dynamic and fun, if a bit chaotic. I still think the non-lead human designs themselves look a bit weird, but they have a lot less screen time here, so it's easier to tolerate them. Plus, Yoshi eats that stupid Secret Life of Pets dog, and then we don't see him again, so my sleep paralysis demon has finally been defeated! And score-wise, I mean, come on, I'm listening to it while writing this part. Do you think I hate it? This is genuinely phenomenal. Not only the way it adapts Galaxy's classic tracks, but also how it incorporates character themes from throughout the whole franchise. And they even got rid of most of the licensed songs this time around to let the score speak for itself, outside of one instance that is funny enough for me to forgive. And of course, I'm a sucker. If you show me a riddle, I'm going to flip. There are so many references here, it's genuinely crazy. I loved seeing Mega Leg, Toasterina, and the Toasterians, Bowser Jr. turning himself into his Wonder Form, even if it was missing the Prowler sound effect from the trailers. And once we get to Gateway Galaxy, we got Ukis, Coin Coffers, Honeybees, Payantas, Ninjas, Gilmo, Bulbos, and Mauser. Rob gets a nice little role, and one of the best jokes in the film. Pikmin show up, which shouldn't be too surprising. I think Miyamoto probably has 100 of these guys placed within his house. And then we get the big ones. Wart. Genuinely insane to see him in such a prominent role after so many years, which has seemingly made a whole new generation attracted to this toad. Speaking of attraction, here's a spoiler that they spoiled themselves less than a week before release. Fox McCloud. What? Yeah, not only does he appeal, but he has a genuine supporting role and the voice of Glenn Powell, and he campaigned to do this himself? What is happening? I was a little worried about this going into the film, as Fox is very much not a Mario character, but somehow, despite all the trouble balancing the rest of the film, I think they made him work. Not only is he portrayed perfectly and is thankfully not retconned into a Mario character, but he helps Mario and friends out just to write him out without getting in the way. It doesn't feel like Smash setup as much as a fun supporting role, which is great. And oh my god, that sword act. When Bowser Jr. does the ah, and then they recreate the wah, and Bowser wah, so then blah shows up, and they use the power-ups from the game, and Luigi makes blue, and then Mario uses the da to fight the blah from Odyssey, even though I'm not sure why it wasn't the blah from Galaxy. Oh, I can't lie. It got a huge smile on my face, even if I think it's indicative of a huge issue I have with this film. This isn't really a Mario Galaxy movie. Like, sure, there are Lumas and Rosalina, and it is a film where Mario is in space, but outside of that, its adaptation of the game's most iconic elements feels very surface level. Like, let's look at the galaxies themselves. Gateway may serve the same purpose, but outside of its shape, is not the same location as the game. Fossil Falls is from Odyssey, Space Junk didn't even try, I'm not sure why they gave it that name. And Drip Drop technically appeals, but like, come on. In terms of accurate adaptations, we only have Honey Hive, which sadly is the dullest part because we barely explore it, and the Comet Observatory, which could you imagine if they somehow messed this one up. Now I know that by pointing this out, I'm gonna have people commenting, did you expect a 1-to-1 adaptation of a Wii game? And honestly, no. Truthfully, I don't think I even needed one. Too many recent adaptations have suffered from doing the same exact thing as the source material. More unique ideas are always appreciated in my book. But there also has to be an understanding of why the original worked so well in the first place. If you remove that core, you lose the whole. And unfortunately, with how lacking most of the adventure is here, I think they did that. This film frustrates me. It has some pretty solid performances, Pratt aside, gorgeous animation, and an incredible score, but the lack of structure and story ultimately made it feel less cinematic than the game is based on. And I'm not sure why that had to be. Over the past months, I've seen so many people try to argue this film's issues are fine because the Mario games have never had a story, why should this? And truthfully, I just have to ask, what Super Mario game are you playing? Even if we were to ignore the RPGs, the aforementioned storybook, or even something like Donkey Kong Bonanza by the same team, which gave Pauline a whole arc less than a year ago, nearly every mainline game begins by explaining what's going on before throwing you into gameplay, and ends with a satisfying conclusion. The last time they didn't do that was on the NES in the 80s, and even those had stories within the manuals. They may be basic and simple, sure, but that's because the gameplay and level design can fill in the gaps and tell a story about this world where traditional storytelling can't. Movies don't do this. The story is the cake that the visuals and score top. Sure, frosting tastes good, but I'd prefer not to eat a whole plate of it. Mario is one of the most famous characters in the entire world. This film is meant to be the centerpiece of his 40th anniversary. For a character that has been so innovative and flexible in the gaming world, there were so many angles you could take this movie to not only celebrate the franchise, but tell a compelling story. But they only focused on doing the first thing, and they didn't even get that right. This would be a much more natural celebration if they actually gave half the cast something to do. Most games you play as Mario, not Bowser. Why must he be a more compelling character than our protagonist? Also, why is he so pessimistic here? And why does it feel like Chris Pratt is trying even less than in the first film? And have you seen this dude's social media posts? Okay, now I'm nitpicking, so let me wrap this up. I don't think it's fair to say this film is awful, and chances are I'll watch it again in a month and be a lot kinder to it with the knowledge of what it is. But I feel like Mario as a character and as a brand can do better than this. I don't even need something challenging or experimental, just the structure that has made the character last for 40 years and likely many more. But no matter how you feel about this film, can you please not be an ass about it? Obviously this applies to the fans harassing anyone who doesn't like this movie, but also the critics too. I've seen too many of y'all directly insult the people going to see this as idiots, but also blatantly use sensationalized reviews to get clicks. At a time where most of the major studios are trying to incorporate generative AI, it seems really immature to talk about how AI could do better just because you didn't like a movie. The lack of professionalism around this is astounding. But I just did a whole section about exaggerated internet discourse in the last video, so I'll wrap it up here. Hopefully next time we could talk about something that is a lot more universally beloved and understood. Damn it, I was gonna make a video about how the internet is misinterpreting the message of hoppers. I could fit it into the outro. Hobbles is not an anti-protest film, as Maple's attempts to save the glade are not portrayed as a bad thing. What is bad is what unprocessed grief that leads to the lie and hold the people that care about her, including George. I think Mayo Jerry's arc is what confuses a lot of people, as they think he has a sudden change of heart at the end, which is unrealistic with the current state of politics. Just think about everything that happens in the last hour before that, and you will realize that most real-world politicians don't go through that. There was a reason he picks up the log like that at the end. The point being, next time you have an issue, kidnap your Mayo. Good night.